Okay, good morning, and welcome to this webinar for our African American Black Student Success Plan grant application process. This is Markeisha Smith, and I am joined by Dr. Daryl Tukufu, and he's going to give a welcome, and we will jump in. And it's helpful if folks, as you're joining, to mute your phones just so we don't have any feedback as we're going through the presentation. There is a presentation, so if you have, if you're joining through the web, then you should be able to see the screen. And if you cannot, just make sure that you send me a message in the chat box so that I can know that people can hear. Okay.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me tell you this, I'm so glad that we're at this point now where we can issue this plan again. We know that you will be responding, and we look forward to your response. You already heard the voice that preceded me, Dr. Markeisha Smith. She will be going over the information for you, and she'll be responding to questions. But I wanted to make sure I welcome you, and just so glad you're out there. We're looking for some good things from you because we want to expand this program. Take care.
All right. You could let me know by sending messages that you can hear me. That's really well. I see one message. Lenny from Gladstone says he can hear me well. Crystal clear, very good. Thank you. ELWC. Hopefully everyone else can hear me. And again, if you are connected to the website for GoToMeeting, I'm hoping that you can see my screen. Could someone let me know if you're connected to the web and can see? There should be a PowerPoint screen that is a PowerPoint presentation that you're seeing on your screen. Okay. So Ingrid says she can see and hear. Very good. All right. So if you are listening on the phone, then when this presentation is over, we will have it available as we did the last time on our website, our ODE webpage, our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion webpage. And so you'll be able to see the slides as well. So just want to make sure. So for those of you that are joining either by phone or through the web, if you could make sure to mute yourself as you are joining on, that will be really helpful. And make sure we don't get any feedback from phones or computers as we're going through the presentation. And I'll give, we'll start here in just another couple of minutes. I see some people are still joining, so I want to make sure that everybody gets on. So we're talking through a slide presentation. If you're joining through the web, then you should be able to follow along and see my screen with the PowerPoint slides visible to you. And so if you're having any audio problems or visual problems, let me know. Again, if you're joining, if you could mute your phones, that would be really great. I'm getting a little bit of feedback on my own here, so. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Dr. Tukufu, Daryl Tukufu, who is our Assistant Superintendent of our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, did a quick welcome for everyone and is excited about this just as I am. Just by way of introduction, again, my name is Dr. Markeisha Smith, and I serve as the Director for our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion here at the Department of Education, and have the privilege of providing support for this grant and to really just be available to individuals in the community who are interested in applying, getting started, to see the slides as I'm going through them. If you are not, then this will be made available to you through our website. We'll have it posted again. Okay, so just kind of an overview of what's happening today. We've had our introductions, and I think our intention, as Dr. Tukufu mentioned, is to really expand the scope of this work. We currently have 4 grantees who were awarded funds in our last biennium and will continue on with their work, but this RFA is an opportunity to expand that work across the state. And so we want to make it clear that that is our intention. We really do welcome applicants from regions of the state where we don't typically have as much outreach. That's really important to us this round. And as I'm going through some of the slides, you'll see some information related to that. And our other intention really at the heart of this is to make sure that we are providing services and programs and support for African American and Black students across the state of Oregon. I mean, that if we had to sort of wrap it up, would really be at the heart of what this work is about. And in doing so, we know that families and community are an important part of what that looks like for student success, both academically, socially, emotionally. So that is our commitment here at the department, and one that we know folks out there who are doing this work are also committed to. I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline. You'll notice, obviously, since this is a reissue of our previous RFP, that we've got an update in our timeline. Talk a little bit about expectations and eligibility, and then have some time for you all to ask questions, make comments, or express any concerns. And I'll talk a little bit about what that process will look like as we have some folks that are on the line and some folks that are joining through the web. So we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to engage with me while you have some time here today. Okay, so first, just a little bit of a discussion around our timeline and important dates. And for those of you that are just joining by phone, I'll kind of talk through some of this, but again, it will be available, the PowerPoint will be available on our website. So as you know, last Friday, September the 22nd, we had a release of what we are now terming a request for application. So it is now an RFA. I have to remember to say it as an RFA because we've been really accustomed to over the last few years saying RFP, but this was information that was shared with us from the Department of Justice in their review, and so this is called an RFA. I think I need to do some research on my own, Dr. T, and make sure I know the difference between the two, but I'm going to take their word. This is an RFA. They're going to refer to it from here on out as such. Applications will be due November the 3rd, and so at this point that was 6 weeks based on the release of last Friday, and so applications will be due at 12 p.m. On November the 3rd. So that should give everyone plenty of time. And as Dr. T and I were talking yesterday, or the day before, we teased a little because we said most of you have had a preview with our previous release of this. And so if you have looked through the document, you'll notice that there are very minor changes to the information that you saw the first time. So you have, hopefully have had some time to plan between that first re-release and then a sort of stepping back and now where we are in the process. The week of November 6th through 17th, we'll really be taking time to screen the applicants, look at what's been accepted and what was logged in on time, and giving some time for individuals who we've selected to do the scoring to do that. And so we'll have that period between the 6th and 17th of November. On November 20th, we are going to be ready to notify applicants of a tentative award. And we say tentative because if you notice in the timeline, the period between November 20th and December 1st, we're actually having an appeal period. And we did that last time as well. And so that was an opportunity for folks who were not awarded to really just sort of reach out to procurement and get some clarification around what that looked like, if they had questions around the scoring of their application. So it really sort of gives a little bit of time for that. But tentatively, individuals will know that they've been awarded grant funding November 20th. We'll then, after that appeal period, be able to notify those for certain who have been awarded. And we'll have another grantee webinar on December the 4th. And that will really be, and I should say for grantees, new grantees, as well as our previous 4 grantees that will be getting funding again this biennium. We're hoping then to have grants into the community by December 11th. And then the rest of this really just sort of goes into what the reporting will look like moving forward. And since our timeline obviously has been pushed back some, we've had to adjust this a little bit, but giving some time for interim progress reports and visits and those sorts of things.
May want to comment a little bit more about the scoring.
For sure. So thank you. Dr. T made the comment about who will be scoring. And so just so everyone is clear, we do have, if you're familiar with this work, an advisory group that has been instrumental in really developing the plan around African American and Black students in the state. They will not and were not involved in any of the scoring previously, nor will they be involved in scoring for this round. We obviously want to maintain, a degree of fidelity in this process, and it's really important that because they are so closely linked to this work, that they not be involved in the scoring of any applications that come in. So they are not involved. In addition to that, myself and Dr. Tukufu, because of our connection to the work, will not be involved in scoring either, but we will have individuals from across different offices within our agency that will invite to score, as well as individuals who have some ties, some link and understanding of equity, diversity, inclusion work outside of our agency. Again, they would not be individuals that would have a conflict of interest. And so that is a question that we ask very clearly in our request for scores. So we just want to make sure that, we're clear that there is a degree of separation between the applications that are being received and the individuals that are scoring those applications. And so we've really taken some time to make sure that we are doing that. So thank you, Dr. Tukufu, for bringing that up. So just want to make sure that folks are clear about that. If you have other questions, once I'm finished with the presentation, please feel free to ask. So again, just the rest of the timeline, we're hoping to have some site visits starting in the new year, and then the rest of this really sort of goes into some of the dates a little bit later in the grant process. I do also want to mention that we will have a grant evaluation contractor that is going to be working with grantees during the course of their grant, during the course of their project activities. Last year, we contracted with RMC Research. This time, we had to go out for another bid. And so we're getting applications in from organizations that were invited to submit bids to be, considered as evaluators, as contracted evaluators for this grant. And so we're hoping to know who that is. We'll have, a process that goes to have those applications reviewed, and, we'll have someone in place by early next month. And so they will also be very instrumental in kind of reports and check-ins and those grant visits, and we'll be working in connection with our team to do that.
I just want to add another point also, so people will be clear, is that evaluators, those who evaluate the program, are not folks that work for the projects that we fund.
Thank you.
They are independent also. I've had a question raised to me just a day or so ago saying, felt that the evaluators are working with the project. They're not. They're independent evaluators. So we make sure we keep all this clean and above board. Right.
Thank you. And the one thing I'll just sort of add on to that is that because of the nature of this work, and because we really were looking for grant evaluators that, or project evaluators that have a culturally responsive lens, there is, this sort of connection that is made between the evaluator team and the grantees. But there's not, as Dr. T said, the evaluators are not working as a part of the grant projects, but rather sort of coming alongside the grantees to really make sure that the story of the work that they are involved in is told in a way that truly reflects the time and commitment that goes into this. So that's a little bit more about what that process will look like. Okay, moving on. So these are a couple of slides, and there's a lot of information here, but this is on page, I'm going to pull up in my document, on page 7 of the actual RFA. Are the project measures of success or indicators of success. And so on the next couple of slides, slides 4 and 5, really just sort of reiterating what that looks like. One of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do, and I have a slide here that I'll pull up here in just a moment, is to really go back and we are working to make sure that it is accessible. So it's a pretty big document. We do have the grant evaluation report that was created by RMC Research last year that really, I think, gives some highlights of some best practice, some promising practice that's happening in communities with African American and Black students. And so I encourage grantees this round, or applicants this round, to look at that report. And as I said, we're people that have requested it. We've been getting it to you via email. We're trying to get it on the website. It's a big document, and we have now some restrictions on just throwing stuff up on our website. We have to make sure that they're accessible for ADA compliance, and so it's taken a little bit longer for this particular document. But if folks are interested in that, we have that available, and so I encourage you to really use that also as a way to think about the sort of project activities and the focus and direction of what you're doing. And it does not have to be that same thing, but I think it's helpful to just sort of get a sense of what we've been seeing over the last year and a half and how that's working with some organizations that have been at this for a really long time, and other organizations that have been around for a really long time but are rethinking the way in which they engage with school districts and community. And so that's one thing I'll point out to you. So as I said, slides 4 and 5, I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically these are the indicators of success. These items come directly from the African American Black Student Success Plan that was finalized in June of this year, and that was work, as I mentioned before, that our advisory group was instrumental in creating. And so what we did here was just really pull out the statements from that plan and put them here so that you'll know what the focus is. And so this spans from birth through post-secondary, right? So really looking at that continuum of development for a student as they matriculate through our system. So if there are questions about that, we can talk about that later. But I just, as I said, wanted to note slides 4 and 5, and then again in your grant RFA. So this is a page that I put in here just to give you a little bit more information. I'm going to pull this up, and hopefully the internet will behave, and it'll go directly to the website. So in case you're not familiar with it, ODE itself has a new website, but we also have a new web page for our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We need to update that picture, so stay tuned. But below that, you'll notice that we have a space for announcements, and so the RFA is posted here. Information about today's webinar was posted there, and some other information. We also have another page that is specific to the African American Black student education. And so if you were to click there, you'll get more information about the House bill itself. Again, you'll see that we've posted information about the RFA and some other information related to the advisory group meetings. And so this is the space where we try and make sure that we are maintaining a web presence for folks so that you know what's happening. This will also be the place where this PowerPoint slides that we're going through today will be posted, and any information that we come across as we go through. So just wanted to make sure that you saw that. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here. This picture here, there's a picture. This is from the actual grant evaluation report from last year. And so just to kind of give you a sense of what that looks like. And so again, if you have not seen that, would like to see that, we can certainly make sure we email it to you as we're in the process of getting it in an accessible format for our website. And then the other link here is just to the RFA itself. So those are some resources that you have available to you. Okay, so eligibility, let's talk a little bit about this. And again, this is all in your RFA, but just to reiterate, so any of the entities below are eligible or can partner together, and any of the entities below also has the ability to be the fiscal agent, as you know, sort of the lead in the work with additional partners, whatever that looks like for you and your organization. In terms of student population, we are looking at a minimum of 10 students. So if we're thinking about student count, but if we're thinking about population of students, and this is more so something to think about for school districts, that 0.75 becomes really important. When we did our calculation, this is about 50 school districts. So if we were just looking at school districts, it's about 50 school districts across the state. So not just in Portland Metro, but looking at different areas of the state, there are about 50 school districts. But again, you've also got that count of 10. And so some direction that you might want to think about as you're creating your application and thinking about your activities is that for those of you that have smaller populations of African American students, but you are in close proximity to another district, right, or another organization, really partnering together to offer services. And so I just want to put that out there specifically also for some of our more rural and remote areas across the state. That might be a really helpful way to think about the way in which you apply and the way in which you think about eligibility. And so here you'll see we have anyone that is doing work in early learning services, school districts, post-secondary institutions, education service districts, culturally specific community-based organizations, which I'll talk a little bit about, a consortium of any of those. We have some other restrictions to think about. If you are a post-secondary institution, obviously you need to work with a school district and a culturally specific organization and thinking about that in a partnership. If you're a culturally specific community-based organization, you need to have at least one school district and or post-secondary institution as a partner. If you're an early learning hub or provider of early learning services, making sure, again, that you're connected in some way to a school district or post-secondary institution or culturally specific organization. So really trying to build that capacity across systems so that you're not operating in silos, right? And we know that you can't do this work in silos. So that's a little bit more about eligibility. Okay, so we do have a section in the RFA that talks about priority awards. And again, our intention with this particular grant opportunity is to really make sure that we are extending the reach across the state. And so we have specified that in certain geographic regions, we will be giving priority. That does not mean, however, because you are not in one of these geographic regions, you should be discouraged from applying. I just want to make that clear because that's been something that even came up prior to, our release of this new version of the RFA. But we have specified. I have a map, I think, on the next slide here, but talking about Southwest, Northwest, Central, and East being given priority. So we will be looking at applicants should they come in. We hope they come in from those areas of our state more closely. We'll also be looking at applicants who've demonstrated a commitment and readiness around some practice specifically for closing opportunity gaps for African American and Black students. We're looking for some evidence of prior implementation of some programming. So it's really important, if that's been work you've been focused on, that you spell that out very clearly in your application. And then this time around, also looking at applicants who have a focus on early learning, so looking at birth through pre-K. And we say that really because there is a big initiative across the state, and some of the governor's priorities are really in this area of early learning. And so we want to make sure that we're building some capacity as well there. So my map is there, so you can kind of get a sense of where those areas are and where you fall into those areas. Again, this is not to discourage applicants from those areas that are not specified in our RFA from applying, and so we want to be very clear about that. So Region 1 would be Southwest, and that includes Coos, Curry, Douglas, Jackson, Josephine, and Lane counties. Region 2 would be Northwest, that's Benton, Clatsop, Columbia, Lincoln, Lynn, Marion, Polk, Tillamook, and Yamhill counties. And we also specify the Central Region, Crook County, Deschutes, Gilliam, Hood River, Jefferson, Klamath, Lake, Morrow, Sherman, Wasco, and Wheeler. And then East, which is Baker, Grant, Harney, Malheur, Umatilla, Union, and Walla Walla. I think I'm saying that correct, as a non-native Oregonian. But again, this is not to discourage folks in our metro area, which includes Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties, from applying. So I just want to make that clear. We do hope to award grants in all of these areas. That'd be really great, right, to have grants, but they will be awarded regionally. I think this next slide, yes, so the next slide talks about the funding tiers. And so you'll notice one difference that was made between the previous RFA and this RFA is that we've added an additional tier, right, just to make sure that things match, right? And so we have 5 tiers, the top tier being $250,000, and the lowest tier, tier 5, being a $50,000 award. What you'll also notice is that we changed a little bit the indicators of success. And so in the grant RFA, there is a section for individuals to, 1, note what grant region they're in, 2, tell us what tier of funding you're applying for, and then 3, tell us which indicators of success you're focusing on. And so going back to the indicators of success would be, I'm trying to find my buttons here. Go back this way. So this was slides 4 and 5, if you'll remember. So those are the indicators of success. Just want to make sure people are clear on that. But there is a section in the RFA for you to talk about what that looks like for you. So at minimum, individuals need to be talking about 3 indicators of success. That's at a minimum, right? So you've got to at least have 3, and that would put you at the lowest tier. Here's the other thing. Maybe you can address all 14, and there's 14 there. And maybe you're saying we can do it with $100,000. That's awesome, right? So we also want to just know that there's some flexibility there. So if you can do more with a little less funding and you can see that happening, great, right? And I know that talking to some other partners who have tiered their funding this way, that actually happens in a lot of instances where they have individuals who are actually doing more, right, in terms of the indicators of success, but are thinking more strategically about how much that would actually cost to do. And so that's another point that I want to put out there. So hopefully that gives us a little more, just gives you some more, something more to think about in terms of how much you apply for and what those indicators of success look like for you. Okay, so just really quickly, we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but all grant applications will be received through our ODE procurement. They do not come directly to our office. They will go to procurement, and all grant fiscal agents will work with procurement at some point in time to make sure that you meet necessary duties for fiscal administration. And so, you know, that's a little bit later on in the process, but I want to call out just really the critical role that our procurement department plays in the grant application process, and even more so now. And we're realizing that with this last, issue that we really now, things have to go to our Department of Justice, and so it's really important that applicants know the important role of our procurement department in this. Any questions that you have specific to the grant application can be directed to myself or Lil Gray. It might be someone from her team that is responding. As you know, individuals are in and out, but it will be someone from procurement. And a lot of times what that happens, when that happens, is a little bit later in the process. Sometimes they're getting questions just about, am I submitting this right? Those sort of technical issues. If you have questions that are more specifically related to the content of the grant and what we're looking for, then I would suggest that you reach out to me and I can speak a little bit more specifically to that. And our procurement team can certainly help you with logistics. And if you send a question their way and they're unable to answer it directly, they'll make sure that I get it. Okay, a little bit more about the procurement process. This, as I mentioned, Dr. Tukufu said, all applications will be reviewed by members of our staff with the exclusion of Dr. Tukufu and myself, some individuals potentially from our government and legal affairs team, teaching and learning assessment staff, student services, YDD, ELD staff, and then outside agency partners who do not have a conflict of interest. And so we try and make sure we have a broad array of reviewers who are not directly connected to any of the applicants or previous or future applicants. Award decision will be discussed with the assistant superintendent, who's Dr. Gerald Tukufu, myself. So we'll be, once all that comes back, looking at that and having a conversation. A little bit more about the grant review. Each application will have a minimum of 3 reviewers. So we try and make sure that there are 3 different reviewers that are looking at each application. We have a scoring rubric. You have a little bit of that information in your RFA on page, give me just a moment here, pages 28 through 32. So pages 28 through 32 really give you a little bit more about our scoring guide. It's not as in-depth, obviously, as what our grant reviewers will get, but it gives you some focus and some areas that you need to pay close attention to. And then here again, we say we want 25% or more of our participation in our grant review process to be from non-ODE staff. And so we're really trying to make sure that we're reaching out and doing that in a way that we're as far removed from it as we can be, but also making sure that we're utilizing expertise within our department. And we have a lot of teams that are heavily involved in grant review and have given us some good feedback and some lessons learned, right? Okay, and I have a question. I see it in the chat box there. I will answer in just a moment here. So with that being said, saw my slides, and so now I want to give some opportunity for individuals to ask questions, and I will address the first question here, and it was just around the deadline. So it is noon, so that is November 3rd at noon. So not midnight, but noon. All right, so lunchtime. That's a good way to remember it. November 3rd at lunchtime. Okay, so now I'll open it up for questions. And so you have a couple of options, and I think for those of you who are on the, are able to be online through your computer, if you are able to type your message or your question to me, then I can respond. If you are only able to use your phone as a way to ask questions, I just, we can do that. Just want to make sure we're not talking over one another and everyone has their opportunity to ask questions. So it is now open for questions if you have them.
Hi, this is Early Learning Washington County. We have a few questions.
Okay.
Dr. Smith, two questions about the evaluation of the applications. Could you tell us how many points will be awarded through the scoring rubric? You have percentages for each question, but no indication of whether the total is 100 points, 120 points, 200 points. And the reason that I ask is related to the bonus points. It specifies that it would be 5 bonus points for certain regions or lack of services, but you don't, unless we have some idea of, but how many points are awarded through the rubric, we don't understand what the bonus points will add to that.
Okay, thank you for the question. So it totals 100, and so we did it as percentages, kind of as a weight, and that's really the way that we've done the grant evaluation in the past is kind of an Excel file, and so we're able to upload that information for the grant reviewers, and then it sort of gives us a percentage there out of 100, and so the 5% would just, or the additional points would just be, on top of that, right? But 100 is the total. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And just to clarify, are there bonus points listed for any of the other areas that additional consideration will be given besides the region?
It's just the regional at this moment in time, just regional, and that's where we've decided to focus. So there wouldn't be bonus points in any other area other than the regional piece. Thank you. Okay. Someone said they can't hear me. Uh-oh. Are folks still able to hear me online? Okay, hopefully. We had a question about will an organization be penalized, or will we be penalized if a school district doesn't partner with any other agency? Not necessarily a penalty. I think it's just, we want you to think very carefully about the organizations, partners in your community that could really help you to leverage some of your services. And so I think that, it's not a penalty, so we're not taking away points, but I know we, are looking to make sure that partnerships are being fostered in this process. And so I'll give you an example. Multnomah Education Service District, and I'll use them because they're the closest that we have kind of as a school district, and specifically their Donald E. Long School. They partnered, so they were the fiscal agent, but they had partnership with some other.
Please enter your access code followed by.
Okay, if we can make sure our phones are muted, please. Thank you.
To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash sign. If you do not have it, just press pound or hash.
Uh-oh. Okay. Okay. So they were not penalized. They were the fiscal agent, but what they did was they reached out to some community partners that were going to provide some professional development services for their transition specialists, I believe is what they call them, as a part of their project. And so that was a partnership that was created. They knew that that was a service that they couldn't offer, in-house. And so they were able to use some of the grant funding to reach out to an organization that they knew could provide those services. And in that created a partnership. And so I hope that that's helpful in answering your question. So not a penalty, but really thinking about where in your project activities you can have that sort of outreach that can extend the way in which you offer services, or the way in which you execute your programs for students. Okay. Oh no, people can't hear me. What's going on? Okay, can you all hear me now? Whoa. Okay. Let's see. Okay, people I think can hear me now. Yes? Yes? I hope. Okay, I'm getting some messages now that the audio was fine. Okay, I can hear you, Okay. And some issue we might be getting is if you're logged into your computer audio, that might be giving you a little bit of some feedback that's off. Okay, and I'm dialed into a phone line here. So, okay, yay, audio's great. Okay, we're back on. I got nervous. Okay. So are there any other questions or comments, concerns about information I shared, ways in which you're thinking about? Okay, so we have a question here from our chat box. Can you please share with us why there's an increase in the number of indicators we need to address per tier? That was really to make sure that because we added a tier, because we added that fifth tier, we really had to look at the numbers across. So I think in the original RSA, 8 was the highest, and that would have been for tier 1. And so really it was just sort of a mathematical, I don't want to say equation. I don't know that it was that deep, but we really had to think about how to make sure that we were spreading that across so that we could add that fifth tier, which is the $50,000 tier, with the 3 or more indicators. So we just had to back up, so sort of balance that out a little bit in the number of indicators. So there are a total of 14, and within that, really thinking about what makes most sense to you. Obviously, some of those are not going to be applicable based on the sort of services you're offering. I know some are focused on post-secondary education. That may not work. Obviously, if you're doing some work in early learning, right? Or it could, I don't know, but just sort of thinking initially off the top of my head. So there was no, it was just really to balance out when we added that fifth tier. Okay, any other questions? Okay. Yeah, so is the 16-17 African-American Black student enrollment data available? We do have that data available, and if individuals email me, I can make sure that you get that. We also have an updated, we did kind of a map of the state that provided some information in terms of numbers and percentages. It actually was really helpful for us in determining the eligibility criteria around a minimum of 10 students, or that 0.75. And so if individuals are interested in that data, we can make sure that that is made available, and I can send that to you individually. That would probably be the easiest if you send me an email and I can get that to you. Okay. Other questions? Those of you that are on only audio, I can take those as well. I've got one more that has come in through our web. Okay, it says, what is the purpose of the visit on the January-February visit when the contract will be signed at the end of December, January, just to get to know each other for new programs? Yes, so this is exactly that. And so we're doing that initial visit just to really say hello, how are you, to get a sense of, you know, who you are, what the work looks like. It also will give you an opportunity to meet with the grant evaluator, whoever we do end up contracting with. And so they will most likely be a part of that visit as well, just to sort of set the foundation for what their work will look like in collaboration with ODE. And so we'll have a deeper visit, you know, or more robust visits as we are, you know, going further into the grant cycle. So that initial visit is just that, a getting to know you, an introduction, and just sort of a mapping out of what the rest of the time will look like for the life of the grant. Okay, I want to pause and make sure I'm giving some opportunity. Anyone on the phone that doesn't have access to a computer to be able to type in questions, if there are any other questions from those of you that are listening just to the audio. Okay. Are you all still there? Everybody can still hear me? Okay, got a few more questions coming in. Okay, people can still hear me. That's good. Okay, so let's go back up. Okay, so the piece around the additional points. So bonus points are only being awarded for a geographic region. And again, in those regions that I specified, I'll go back here in my PowerPoint. This is on slide 8, and it is on page, flipping back and forth here between some documents, so forgive me. It is on page 13 and 14 in your RFA document. But bonus points, 5 bonus points are only being awarded for geographic region and not any other area in the application. Okay, so something about the timeline. Let me go back up. There might be a typo there. Okay, so that is a typo. Thank you for catching that. That should be March 9th, 2018 is what that should say. So I have March 9th, 2017. We will be past that. So I apologize for that. That was a typo in our timeline. So thank you for pointing that out. And I think actually in the grant, in the RFA, it is correct. So on page 17 in the RFA, it does say March 9th, 2018. My slide, however, has it as 2017. So the information in your RFA is correct. Thank you for that. Okay, based on the map and dividing of funds across the state, do you intend to grant 250 in the Portland Metro? No, that's not necessarily the case. And again, individuals who are not in Portland Metro that have 11 or more of those success indicators and submit a grant application could do that at a tier 1 for 250. So there is not this idea in our minds that there will automatically be a grant for 250 in Portland Metro. We want to make sure, again, that that opportunity is extended across the state. Okay, good questions. All right, again, I want to offer, if anyone's just on the phone line, if you have questions, if you're not able to type your question into our chat box. And I'm trying to keep up with those as well. Thank you, these are good questions. You are making me work today. Okay, anyone on the phone with questions? All right, I have a thank you. You are welcome for the secure file transfer. We enjoy that as well. It makes sure that, particularly for larger files, that we don't lose anything, nothing gets missed, and that you also don't have to make any unnecessary trips down here to Salem to submit your grant application. So that secure file transfer has been very useful to us as we've been administering grant awards over the last few years, since my time here anyway. So, okay, I will remain online. I want to make sure that if you have questions that you did not get answered, that they are answered. And, uh-oh, I don't want to go quite that far. So this is question period. If you do have to hop off, that's perfectly fine. I don't have any more slides to show at this point. Just want to make sure that I'm using our full time to 11 o'clock to answer any questions. Again, this PowerPoint presentation, as well as this webinar, so this recording, will be available on our website. So any other questions? Comments? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I know people are getting off. Appreciate your time. If you have questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. We are here to assist you. And again, I'll be on for the next 10 minutes or so if other individuals have questions. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions, so I am going to sign off as well. And if folks have additional questions or concerns, please feel free to email me, and we will assist you. Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day.